Thank you, Speaker. I move that a bill be introduced for an act to amend the Residential Tenancies Act 2010 to prohibit no grounds terminations of residential tenancy agreements and for other purposes.
The question is that this bill be now introduced. I'll put the question and all of that opinion say aye. To the contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Member for Newtown.
I bring up the bill, an electronic copy of which has been provided to the clerk, and move that this bill now be read a second time. No. Yes? Great. Do you need a physical one as well? Lovely. Thank you, Speaker. Today, on behalf of the Greens, I am introducing the Residential Tenancies Amendment Prohibiting No Grounds Evictions Bill 2022 to finally put an end to unfair no grounds evictions in New South Wales. New South Wales is in a rental crisis that is worsening by the day. Every single day, renters are being hit with massive rent increases. They're too fearful to negotiate or ask for basic repairs because of the constant threat of being evicted. The rental vacancy rate is at record lows, and rents have skyrocketed up to 40% this year in some Sydney suburbs and as much as 30% in regional New South Wales. Renters in this state are desperately in need of security, they need stability, and they need urgent rent relief right now. And with this bill before us in the chamber, we could deliver all of that by Christmas. Forget the cost of lettuce. The cost of rent is by far the most significant expense in people's weekly budget. The number of households experiencing moderate or severe rental stress is on the rise, and the latest census data shows that a third of renters are in rental distress, meaning that they are paying 30% or more of their household income on rent every week. Rising food and energy costs pale in comparison to the pointy end of this cost of living crisis. And a recent report commissioned by Housing All Australians warns that more than 2 million lower-income rental households will be in serious housing stress by 2051. We know that the current no-grounds evictions provisions, which allow landlords to evict tenants at the end of a lease or during a lease with no reason whatsoever, are a key driver to this problem. Currently, tenants in New South Wales who meet all of their responsibilities and pay their rent on time can be evicted at the end of their lease without any reason. Tenants on an ongoing periodic agreement face even more insecurity. They can be asked to vacate the property with just 90 days' notice, again, without the landlord having to give any reason. If a landlord believes that they can get more money for a new tenant, they can simply terminate the lease of the existing tenant with no grounds and no good reason. And we are seeing this play out in real time in regional communities as Sydney's worsening unaffordability crisis is driving people from the city into the regions and causing chaos on the housing affordability crisis in the regions. A recent report commissioned by the rental review site Rent Rabbit found that 20 New South Wales regional communities are all deeply experiencing the rental crisis, with tenants in severe rental stress. Communities from Port Macquarie to Narooma to Swansea to Wagga and Tamworth and Tweed have rising rents and low vacancy rates. No grounds evictions are driving and increasing this crisis because landlords know that they can just boot out tenants for city renters who they know will pay more because it will seem like less rent to what they had been paying in the city before. All of this cost comes at a great price to our society and our community. Many New South Wales renters don't know where they will be living from year to year, or in some cases from month to month. This instability creates a huge amount of stress, particularly for children who are forced to move schools, elderly people or people rely on local health and support services, and those and are preventing renters from being able to put down their roots in their neighbourhoods and their communities and contribute to our society. The Tenants' Union estimates that evictions cost the average renter more than $4,000 and that up to 30% of renters will face an eviction through no fault of their own. And the risks of evictions, particularly into homelessness, are especially high for people who are experiencing personal crises or other stresses. Now, the Greens recognise that in certain circumstances it is reasonable for a landlord to terminate a rental agreement. Contrary to what some may say and suggest for me on the other side at times in this chamber, we recognise that there are cases which would be completely legitimate and reasonable grounds for which a tenant would be evicted. The bill prescribes those genuine grounds and sets them out quite clearly. The first of those grounds is that the landlord themselves or a close family member of the landlord intends to live in the property for more than 12 months. The second of those would be that the landlord intends to carry out renovations or repairs that will make the property uninhabitable for a period of more than 4 weeks and ensure that all the necessary permits and approvals have been acquired. The third would be that the premises will be used in a way or kept in a state that it cannot be used as a residence for at least 6 months. And the fourth would actually allow any other grounds prescribed by regulations set out by the minister in this bill. The reason for that is because we know that there is always a risk that when we bring a crossbench bill to this chamber that people will want to say, but what about this bit? What about that bit? We haven't consulted on these grounds. And what we're saying here is the urgency to act on this crisis and pass this bill before Christmas means that we want to give the power to the minister to be able to set in regulations additional grounds if required. And so if any member of this place is hearing the reasonable grounds that we are putting forward and wishes to advocate for other grounds to be included, there will be the space and opportunity to do that, but that can be done at a time where we have acted in response to the urgency of the crisis renters across the state are facing. Those are the grounds, as I just set out, that under this bill would be considered reasonable to terminate a lease. It would prevent unfair, no grounds evictions taking place because we know right now across this state of New South Wales there are a whole lot of very unreasonable ways that landlords are kicking tenants out. It is not reasonable for a tenant to be kicked out of their home because they attempted to negotiate with the landlord or agent about the cost of their rent rise, or they even dared to question the idea that they were subjected to a rent increase. It is absolutely not reasonable for a tenant who requests essential repairs and maintenance, like, excuse me, there is a massive hole leaking water into my bedroom onto my bed, or my entire study is covered in mould because there is a whole damp issue, or my oven doesn't work. It is unacceptable for tenants who make requests for basic maintenance repairs to not do so because they're fearful that they will risk eviction as a result of making that maintenance request. And we think that it is not reasonable that a landlord or real estate agent would put off repairs, realising that they can wait until the lease expires, evict tenants, raise the rent and get a new tenant to start again because they know the rental market is so hot right now that you can just kick someone out at the end of their lease, bump up the rent another $30 a week, and then make more money and do the same in 6 or 12 months' time. They are not reasonable grounds for someone to be kicked out of their home, for a child to be forced to move schools, for an elderly person to find a new GP or doctor, and they are not grounds, not reasons that would be reasonable to subject those renters to exorbitant costs of moving every 6 to 12 months. These are not hypothetical examples, and I know that every member of this chamber, there is no way you could ignore those stories, because once upon a time they might have just been stories in the heart of Newtown where we have 50% of people renting. But these are stories now that are being covered daily in the Daily Telegraph and in the Murdoch press. These are stories that are as real and as live in northern New South Wales and western New South Wales and southern New South Wales as they are in Erskineville or St Peters or Darlington. We know that this is a crisis facing everyone across the state, and we have the opportunity in this parliament to bring a change that would offer that security to everyone before the year's end. The other key provision in this bill is that it would provide for remedies to tenants who are wrongfully evicted. Sections 85A and 85B make it a requirement for landlords to ensure residential premises are used in accordance with the grounds an eviction is made, and empower the New South Wales Civil and Administrative Tribunal to compensate tenants if a landlord breaches the grounds of an eviction, including directing the landlord to use the property as per the grounds set out in the eviction, and or reinstating a residential tenancies agreement to tenants wrongfully evicted, and or paying compensation to a tenant to cover the costs associated with a wrongful eviction. People who live in rental properties are not second-class citizens. They are families, children, individuals, retirees, students, migrants, and young people. These rental properties are their homes, and they should be able to put down roots in a safe, secure, affordable house and connect with their community without ever facing the ongoing stress and the uncertainty of knowing that opening the letterbox, opening an envelope, opening your email can result in the fact that your entire family, your entire life is about to be uprooted because a landlord wants to make an extra $30 or because a landlord doesn't want to fix their oven. We need to recognise that there are now 2 million people in New South Wales facing this stress every day, and it is not a stress that we should be putting on our communities. And there is something that we can do right now to act. With housing unaffordability worsening and home ownership rates declining, many people are renting for longer than ever before. There are generations now of people that know they will rent their entire lives. And the stress that it is causing them to know that they will be renting their entire lives with that level of insecurity and power as to whether or not the place they call home now will be the place they call home in a couple of months is something that we must act on. We have a moral obligation to resolve this. The 2021 census data tells us that over 2 million people rent in New South Wales in the private rental market. That's 2 million people living with the chronic insecurity and power imbalance that has been allowed to become a feature of renting in New South Wales. That balance needs to be tipped back right, and introducing reasonable grounds to end unfair no-grounds evictions is the start to re-establishing that balance and showing respect to those 2 million people in New South Wales.
Member for Newtown, were you wanting to finish yours? Because under the resolution, it's 1:45.
Amazing. I will finish now, Speaker, if I can take leave to just do that. Thank you. This isn't and shouldn't be a controversial issue. Ending no grounds evictions is a sensible and practical reform that the Tenants Union in New South Wales have been pushing back for years. Back in 2018, the Make Renting Fair campaign, backed in by a coalition of unions, social services, local councils and community legal centres, pushed for it. The former Labor leader committed New South Wales Labor to this policy back then, and just last week in question time, Labor members sat and interjected during an answer to a Premier's question confirming that they also back in an end to unfair no grounds evictions. Even the now Treasurer, then Fair Trading Minister Matt Keane, also acknowledged that we need this reform in 2018 when he said no grounds evictions, retaliatory evictions, all these things are currently undermining renters' rights in New South Wales. It is time to get this done. We cannot wait till the next Parliament. We can provide with renters protection now. I acknowledge the Tenants Union for their assistance and support in drafting this bill and would urge all members to seek a briefing from them on this bill as to why it is so essential. I acknowledge those that are here as part of the Healthy Homes for Renters campaign and love the wonderful unintended timing of the fact that you could be here as we second read this debate in this bill into the chamber today. I want to urge all members to take a moment to really look deeply at this bill. It is a bill that we could pass before Christmas. It is a bill that the community needs, and it is something we can do together to end this term of Parliament and deliver for the 2 million renters living in New South Wales. I commend the bill to the House.